My wife slept with my best friend, and now she's claiming half of our $500, $0 house, and $250, $0 in savings in divorce court. She's even suing me for emotional damage over our family business, which I built from scratch. The day I found out my wife was cheating on me was like being hit by a freight train I didn't see coming. We had always seemed like the perfect couple: good jobs, a beautiful house worth $500,000, and a savings account with about $250,000 tucked away. I thought I knew everything about her. Turns out I was dead wrong. The thing is, I've never been the jealous type, and I certainly didn't suspect anything was wrong until the signs started piling up. It started with little things. She'd be more distant, secretive about her phone, always quick to change the subject when I asked about her day. She became more dismissive, often brushing me off when I wanted to talk about plans or our future. Honestly, I thought maybe she was just stressed at work or had some personal issues she wasn't ready to share. I tried to be supportive, but I couldn't shake this gnawing feeling that something wasn't right. Then came the day I accidentally saw the messages on her phone. I was in the bedroom looking for my keys, and I noticed her phone was unlocked on the nightstand. I normally wouldn't look through her stuff, but something told me to check. What I found chilled me to the bone. There were intimate texts, things that were clearly more than just friendly banter. Flirty comments, suggestive pictures, even plans to meet up. The worst part: they were from her supposed best friend, Jake. I couldn't believe it. Jake was like family, trusted, reliable, the guy I'd introduced to her years ago. And now I was reading about their secret rendezvous, their late-night texts, and their plans to see each other behind my back. My mind raced. How long had this been going on? How many times? Did she ever think about how much she was hurting me? I felt sick, confused, betrayed in a way I never thought possible. I confronted her that night. I told her I knew about Jake, about the texts, about everything. Her reaction was infuriating. She looked me dead in the eyes and said I was overreacting, that I was paranoid, that Jake was just a friend and I was making a big deal out of nothing. She claimed I was imagining things, that I was insecure and jealous. But I wasn't stupid. I knew what I saw. And what hurt the most was how she lied so easily, how she gaslit me with her words and her excuses. The anger bubbled up inside me, but beneath that was a deep, aching sadness. I'd built this life from scratch: our house, our savings, our family business that I poured every ounce of myself into. And now I was faced with this betrayal, this complete breakdown of trust. I kept asking myself how she could do this, how she could lie so convincingly, how she could pretend everything was fine when she was sneaking around with my best friend. As the days went on, I felt a strange mix of rage and despair. I started noticing other things: her spending more time away, her phone always glued to her hand, her dismissive attitude whenever I tried to talk about our marriage. I felt like I was losing my mind. I kept replaying the moments I thought were normal, trying to find some clue I missed, but deep down I knew the truth. It hit me hard. This wasn't just about her having an affair. It was about everything I had worked for, everything I believed in. My house, my savings, the business I built from nothing. I was about to lose it all, and for what? For a woman who couldn't keep her legs closed and a so-called best friend who was supposed to be like family. I felt betrayed not only by her but by the entire world. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, trying to process how I was supposed to move forward. I knew I had to confront her again to get some answers, but I also knew I wasn't going to let her walk all over me or take everything I had built. I needed a plan. I needed to fight back. That's when I realized this was just the beginning. The next morning I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My head was pounding and my stomach was twisted into knots. All I could think about was what I had uncovered the night before: the betrayal, the lies, the way she had looked at me with that fake innocent stare when I confronted her. I knew I couldn't just sit around and let her keep pretending everything was normal. I had to act. First thing I did was dig into our finances. I needed to understand what I was really up against. I pulled out bank statements, looked at our savings account, our investment accounts, everything. I wanted to see if she was hiding anything, if she'd been spending money on Jake or someone else. What I found was eye-opening. She'd been making secret purchases, luxury handbags, jewelry, even small deposits into a separate account she'd opened under a fake name. She was planning something, I was sure of it. I also checked our business records. Our family-owned company was the backbone of everything I'd built. I'd started it from scratch, worked tirelessly to grow it into a successful enterprise. Now I discovered she'd been secretly siphoning off money, transferring funds to her own account, and even secretly hiring a lawyer for her divorce case. She was already planning her next move, and I felt like I'd been again. How could she do this? How could she betray me and the life we built like it was nothing? That afternoon, I decided I had to confront her again face to face. I told her I knew everything about the affair, the secret spending, the money she was hiding. Her reaction was classic. She started crying, claiming she was under so much stress, that Jake was just a distraction, that she didn't mean for it to go this far. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You're overreacting. You're just jealous because I still love you, but I needed something to make me feel alive. It's not a big deal." That's when I lost it. I told her she was full of shit, that I knew she was lying about everything, that I had proof of her affair, proof of her financial schemes, proof that she was trying to take half of everything I worked for. I was furious. I told her I was done playing her game, that I was going to fight for what's mine, for the house, the savings, the business. She tried to deny it all, but I had screenshots, bank records, and even a witness, my cousin Mark, who saw her sneaking out late at night. That was the breaking point. From that moment, I realized I had to get serious. I started talking to a lawyer that very day. I wanted to know my options, how to protect what was legally mine. I also started planning my next moves with a cool head. I couldn't let her see how much she'd hurt me. I knew she was trying to manipulate me, to spin stories and make it seem like I was the bad guy. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I'd worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to let her walk all over me. In the meantime, she kept up her act, crying, pleading, trying to convince me she loved me and that everything would be okay if I just forgave her. But I saw through her. She was just trying to soften me up, to make me feel guilty. Honestly, I was furious. How could she lie so easily? How could she pretend she still cared when she had been screwing my best friend behind my back? It made me sick to my stomach just thinking about it. The worst part was feeling helpless. She was so manipulative, so good at pretending to be the victim. She kept insisting she was sorry, that she'd never do it again, and that she just needed some time to figure things out. But I knew better. I knew she was planning her escape, trying to take everything I had, and I couldn't let that happen. I had to be smart. I had to protect myself. So I did what any man in my position would do. I started gathering evidence. I set up hidden cameras in the house, not to invade her privacy but to catch her in the act if she ever slipped up again. I also contacted Jake. I wanted to hear it straight from him. Turns out I didn't need to. I found out through a mutual friend that Jake had been bragging about how he and my wife had been doing it for months. That was like a punch to the gut. I felt this mix of rage and despair all over again. Now I was really angry. Not just at her, but at myself for trusting someone so completely. I had built this life, this house, this business. Everything I had was now under threat. I didn't want her to walk away with a dime, especially not the house or the savings. I knew I had to fight for it legally. I also decided I'd make her regret ever crossing me. If she thought she could just cheat and then take half my life's work, she was dead wrong. That night I sat alone in the living room, staring at the walls I'd painted, the furniture I bought, all the memories of a life I thought was perfect. I realized I had a choice. I could let this destroy me, or I could fight back. I chose to fight. I wasn't going down without a fight. I was going to make sure she paid for what she did, and I was going to come out the other side stronger. Would you like me to continue? The next few days turned into a whirlwind. I was deep in planning mode, trying to stay one step ahead of her. I knew she'd be trying to spin her story, manipulate the situation, maybe even try to turn the kids against me. But I had my own game plan. I had to protect what was mine, and that meant being cold, calculated, and relentless. I met with my lawyer that very morning. Sitting across from him, I laid out everything I'd uncovered, The secret bank account she'd opened, the payments she'd made, the affair with Jake, the plans she was scheming to take the house and the savings. My lawyer listened carefully, nodding, taking notes. Then he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You've got a strong case, especially with the proof you have, but she's going to fight dirty. You need to be prepared for a nasty divorce and possibly a court battle over the house and the business." That's when I decided I needed to be even more strategic. I hired a private investigator. I wanted to know if she was meeting with Jake again, if she was trying to hide anything else. Turns out, I didn't have to look far. The Pie followed her around town, snapping photos of her sneaking into hotels, meeting with Jake in discreet locations. I also got a hold of some messages she'd sent him, full of promises to take everything and leave him with nothing. That sealed it for me. She was planning her escape, and I had to stop her. Meanwhile, I also started preparing emotionally. I knew I couldn't let her see how much she was hurting me. I kept my cool, played it like I was just doing what I had to do to protect my family and my assets. I couldn't afford to let her manipulate me anymore. I had to be the one in control. I also reached out to a divorce attorney who specialized in high net worth cases. I wanted to make sure I was legally protected, that she couldn't just walk away with half of everything I'd worked so hard for. The more I delved into her schemes, the more furious I got. She'd been planning this for months. She'd even gone as far as hearing her own lawyer behind my back trying to draw up a settlement that favored her. She thought she could just take half of the house, half of the savings, and walk away like she was entitled to everything. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I had evidence, I had a plan, and I was ready to fight. One night I caught her in a lie. She told me she was going out with her sister, but I had the Pie follow her again. Turns out she was meeting Jake at a secluded cabin 2 hours away. I couldn't believe it. The betrayal was so much worse than I'd thought. I felt my blood boil. How could she do this to me? How could she lie so effortlessly, pretend everything was fine, and then sneak off to be with him? I decided I needed to confront her directly. The next morning I told her I knew everything. I played it cool, but inside I was seething. I told her I had proof of her affair, her secret accounts, and her plans to leave with as much as she could take. She started crying, trying to deny everything, but I cut her off. I told her she was a liar, a cheat, and that I wasn't going to let her destroy everything I built. I warned her that if she tried to take the house or the savings, I'd fight her in court, and I'd fight dirty if I had to. I also made it clear I wasn't going to be a pushover. I reminded her of the family business, the one I'd built from nothing. I told her she wasn't getting a dime of that unless the court awarded it to her, and I was prepared to fight for every penny. I even went as far as to secretly record some of her conversations, just in case she tried to deny her plans later. I knew I had to be prepared for anything. That afternoon, I sat down with my lawyer again. We drafted a plan to file for divorce, to protect the house, the savings, and the business. We also discussed how to handle the custody of the kids, something I was dreading but knew I had to be ready for. I wanted to make sure she couldn't just manipulate the system or spin some sob story to get what she wanted. I was determined to hold on to what was mine. As I looked around the house that day, I felt a strange mix of anger and sadness. This place, these memories, everything I'd worked for, being threatened now by a woman I once loved and trusted. I wondered how I had missed the signs, how I hadn't seen it coming. But deep down, I knew I had to stay strong. I had to be the one in control, because if I didn't fight for what was mine, she'd take it all and I'd be left with nothing. Would you like me to continue? The days that followed felt like living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I was juggling so many things: lawyers, the private investigator's reports, trying to keep my emotions in check while knowing she was plotting her next move. I kept telling myself I had to stay cool, but inside I was boiling. Every time I thought about her with Jake, I felt this intense rage, like I'd been punched in the gut over and over again. I'd poured everything into that marriage, into this house, into the business, and now she was trying to take it all away from me. One thing I refused to do was let her see how much she was breaking me. I kept up appearances, pretending everything was fine, even when I was losing sleep. I spent hours poring over our financial records, looking for any loopholes or hidden assets. I also started documenting everything, her secret meetings, her spending, her lies. I wasn't just fighting for the house or the money. I was fighting for my dignity, for my reputation, for the life I had built. Meanwhile, she was trying to act like the victim. She'd burst into tears during our conversations, claiming she was sorry, that she loved me, that it was just a mistake, that she'd never do it again. But I knew better. I knew it was all an act. She was trying to soften me up, to make me back down. The more she cried, the more I saw through her. I could tell she was panicked, desperate to save herself, but I wasn't about to let her manipulate me anymore. The real turning point came when I got the evidence from the pie, photos, videos, and messages. Seeing her with Jake at that cabin, holding hands, kissing, there was no denying the truth anymore. It was a punch to the gut. I felt the betrayal deep in my bones. I knew I had to act fast before she managed to do anything else to mess me up. I called my lawyer again and told him I wanted to file for divorce immediately. I made it clear I wasn't interested in a messy, drawn-out court battle, but I was prepared to go the distance if needed. I also told him I wanted full custody of the kids and I wanted to protect the business from her grasp. I didn't trust her anymore. She'd proven she was capable of lying and scheming, and I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything I'd fought so hard for. She caught wind of my plans. One evening, she barged into my office, crying, begging me to give her a chance, claiming she'd changed, and that she'd do anything to save what was left of our marriage. But I was done listening to her lies. I looked her in the eyes and told her I knew about everything, her affair, her secret accounts, her plans to take the house. I told her I was filing for divorce and that I wasn't going to be manipulated anymore. Her face twisted with anger and frustration, but I didn't care. I was done being the good guy. That night, I sat alone in the house I'd built, feeling emptier than ever. I thought about everything, the good times, the bad times, the betrayal. I wondered how I'd let someone I loved so deeply get away with destroying everything. But I also knew I had no choice but to fight. I had to stand my ground, protect my assets, and make sure she didn't walk away with a dime. I was ready for the battle, even if it meant going to court, even if it meant losing sleep for months. I realized that this wasn't just about money or property. It was about respect, about my dignity. I'd never been a confrontational person before, but now I knew I had to be ruthless. I'd spent years building my life, my business, my home. I wasn't going to let her take it all without a fight. I was angry, yes, but also determined. I was going to make her regret ever crossing me, and I was going to come out of this stronger. If she thought she could cheat, lie, and manipulate her way to the top, she had another thing coming. Now I sit here reflecting on everything, realizing that sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes you have to fight for yourself, for your future, for what's rightfully yours. I've learned that trust can be shattered in a second, and that betrayal cuts deep. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought, and I won't let anyone, not even the woman I once loved, destroy me without a fight. Would you like me to continue? The court date was set, and I knew the fight was about to get uglier. She was pulling out all the stops, more tears, false accusations, trying to paint me as the bad guy. Her lawyer was relentless, claiming I was trying to ruin her life, that I was being possessive and controlling. But I had my evidence, my witnesses, and a clear plan. I wasn't going to let her spin her web of lies and walk away with half of everything I'd worked for. I remember the day of the hearing like it was yesterday. I sat across from her in that cold courtroom, feeling the weight of everything I was fighting for. My lawyer laid out the facts, the secret accounts, the affair, the plans to take the house and the business. My wife's lawyer countered, trying to claim I was abusive, manipulative, and that I was unfit to have custody of the kids. I wanted to laugh. This was all just her desperate attempt to distract from the truth. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. I explained how she'd betrayed me, how she'd been secretly planning her escape for months. I presented the evidence, screenshots, bank records, the pie's reports. I told the judge I wanted full custody of the children because I didn't trust her anymore, and that I was fighting to keep the business intact for our future. I saw her trying to hold back tears, but I also saw the flicker of anger in her eyes. She knew she was losing. The judge listened carefully, asking questions about the financial details, the affair, and our children. It was intense. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but I kept my composure. I knew this was the moment where everything would either fall into place or blow up in my face. After what felt like hours, the judge took a recess to deliberate. When the court reconvened, the verdict was finally announced. The judge awarded me full custody of the kids and ordered her to pay a significant portion of the settlement, covering the house, the savings, and a fair division of the business assets. My wife's face blanched. She tried to object, to argue, but the judge was clear. Her actions had demonstrated she was unfit to make decisions for the children, and her financial schemes were unacceptable. As I left the courtroom, I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. I had fought hard, and I'd won some battles, but I knew the war wasn't over. She had already begun trying to appeal, to find some loophole, some way to come back and claim what she thought was hers. I also knew that emotionally, I was drained. I had gone from a man who trusted his wife completely to someone who now questioned everything about his marriage and his future. In the days that followed, I focused on rebuilding. I poured myself into the business, making sure every detail was airtight, every asset protected. I also worked on my relationship with the kids, trying to give them stability and reassurance. They were young and innocent, and I didn't want them to suffer because of her mistakes. I also started therapy because I realized I needed help processing everything: the betrayal, the heartbreak, the anger. Looking back now, I realize how much I learned from this ordeal. I learned that trust can be fragile, that some people will betray you in ways you never expected. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought, that I can survive even the worst betrayals. I've become more cautious, more aware, and more determined to protect myself and what's mine. Most importantly, I've come to understand that sometimes you have to fight for yourself. No matter how much you love someone, if they betray you and try to take everything you've built, you can't just roll over. You have to stand your ground. Because at the end of the day, your integrity, your future, and your dignity depend on it. And I know now that I'm capable of doing just that, fighting for what's right, for what's mine, and for my own peace of mind. Would you like me to continue with the final part? After the court case, life didn't exactly go back to normal, but I started to find my footing again. The house was quieter now, less tense. My kids were adjusting, and I threw myself into rebuilding what I could: more hours at the business, making sure every dollar was accounted for, every asset protected. I stayed vigilant, knowing she'd try to come back with more tricks, more lies. But I was ready for her. I learned that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to fully restore, and I wasn't about to be naive again. The most surprising part of this whole ordeal was how much I discovered about myself. I'd always thought I was a straightforward guy: work hard, provide, protect what's mine. But this experience forced me to confront my own vulnerabilities. I realized I'd been too trusting, too eager to see the best in people, even when the signs were right in front of me. Now I've become more cautious, more guarded. That doesn't mean I don't want love or companionship, but I know better than to take it for granted or ignore the warning signs. My relationship with my kids is stronger than ever. They're young, but I've made sure they understand that their dad is there for them, no matter what. I want them to grow up knowing that sometimes life throws curveballs, but the key is to stand tall and fight for what's right. I've also learned to set boundaries. No more blind trust, no more ignoring red flags. I tell my friends and family that if something doesn't feel right, it probably is. Protect yourself, because nobody else will do it for you. As for her, she's still trying to fight for a piece of the pie, but I've taken steps to make sure she can't do any more damage. I've cut ties with her, and I'm living my life on my terms now. The house is paid off, the business is thriving, and I've even started dadding again. It's slow and I'm cautious, but I realize I deserve happiness after all this chaos. I don't regret standing up for myself, even if it was painful. It's made me stronger. Looking back, I see this whole experience as a harsh lesson in trust, resilience, and self-reliance. I learned that love isn't enough to keep a relationship afloat when betrayal is lurking beneath the surface. I learned that sometimes The only way to protect what matters is to fight for it with everything you've got. And I learned that, ultimately, you have to prioritize yourself, your sanity, and your future. So if there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this. Don't ignore the signs. Don't let yourself be by someone you love. If you feel something off, dig deeper. Protect your assets, your heart, and your peace of mind. Because in the end, nobody else will do it for you. And trust me, surviving betrayal is hard, but coming out the other side stronger is worth every sleepless night and every heartbreak. You just have to be willing to fight for it.